Rachel, and today I'm going to talk about something a little bit different from what I've been making videos on recently. I'm going to step away from the whole fashion and beauty side of things and talk about my other really big passion in life, which is books. So every year I set myself a reading challenge for how many books I'm going to read in a year. This year I thought I might be a little bit behind with going back to uni, so I only set myself a challenge of 75. I ended up surpassing this and I'm coming up close to about 115 at the minute, so I read a lot. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about sort of what have been my favourite books this year and which ones I really enjoyed. I like to read a mix of fiction and non-fiction, and I'm also really into my graphic novels as well. So I'm going to try and kind of cover all those bases when I talk about the books I've really enjoyed. And it'd be great to know what you guys think if you've read any of these, and also let me know in the comments below what has been your favourite book of this year. So the first kind of series of books I'm going to talk about is a graphic novel series called Y: The Last Man. This is one that I actually started reading last year, but I've kind of read the last sort of 6 books or 6 volumes in the series this year, and it's been really good. So it's this graphic novel series that takes place in this world where suddenly, kind of out of nowhere, every male mammal on the planet dies, or at least like everyone with an XY chromosome. Everyone that is, except this one guy Yorick and his monkey Ampersand. And it's kind of vaguely explained later on why they survive, but you don't really know why at first, and you don't know kind of why all the other males have died. And it's a really great book because it's interesting from this feminist perspective of, like, you know, how the world would cope without men and what happens and things like that. But it's also really good just in terms of being a great sci-fi series, a really great action series, and I absolutely loved it. The first sort of like 3 volumes I thought were really good, although I read those last year. The middle did get a little bit kind of like dull for me, so sort of volumes 5 and 6 weren't so great, and I was a bit like, meh. But I got through them, and then the last ones were really good. So 7 and 8 were pretty good, and then 9 and 10 were brilliant. Like, I loved how it ended. I thought that was really good. Although there was a bit that made me really sad and I cried. But I cried everything, so. The next books I want to talk about are kind of edging more into fiction. Well, they are fiction. But they're books by an author whose name I can never pronounce. Jodi Picoult. Basically, you know the woman who wrote My Sister's Keeper? Everyone knows that book. Everyone knows the film. I still haven't seen the film, but I did read the book. Anyway, point is, I've been reading quite a few of her books just because my local library here in Lewisham has like an abundance of them. So I've actually read 4 of her books this year. The first one was 19 Minutes, which I read back in April. And I read this while I was on holiday in Greece with Dan. And it was one of those books I just couldn't put down, actually. It was really good. It's about this school shooting, and it's kind of from the perspective of the people investigating it, one of the girls who was there and experienced it but can't really remember what happened, and also from the perspective of the school shooter. So it's really emotional but really good. The ones I read were Plain Truth, which was one of my favourites. That was about this girl in an Amish family who has a baby in secret, and then she kind of like blacks out, and then the next morning she wakes up and the baby's gone, and then someone in the family finds the baby dead, and there's this whole like murder investigation because everyone thinks she killed the baby. So it's really good. Again, very emotional, and you know, she's very good at writing about these kind of like quite sort of touchy subjects, but doing it quite well, and they're always really well researched as well, which is great. The ones of hers that I read were House Rules, which was about an autistic boy who's accused of murder. That one I really liked because I really liked the characters in it, and it was just a really quite a fun one to read, even though again it's quite dark. But it's quite a fun one to read, and I liked the ending a lot. But as always, she puts these kind of like twists in her books and her stories, and I saw this one coming like a mile off. It was really obvious the whole way through. So that was a little bit disappointing, but it ended in a good place, and I did like that one a lot. The final one of hers I read was The Storyteller, which was so emotional, and again I cried at this one. Seriously, I cried at everything. Basically, it's a book about the Holocaust, and it's told from the perspective of a Jewish woman now, and it turns out that her grandmother was a Holocaust survivor who was in Auschwitz, and she meets a man who confesses to her that he used to be a Nazi, and he actually was at the same camp as her grandmother. And so it's kind of told from her perspective of her trying to sort of get him prosecuted now, and also told in flashbacks of his experience, like, and him telling his story of what happened then, and also the grandmother telling her story. The structure of the book was a little bit iffy for me because it kind of felt like they just dumped the grandmother's story in the middle, and it didn't quite fit with the rest of the book. It kind of felt like this awkward book within a book, and then it was forgotten about. But the actual content of the story was brilliant. It was very emotional, made me really sad, but it was a really, really good book. Sticking with fiction, another one of my favourites this year was The Bunker Diary by Kevin Brooks. And this was quite a short book. It didn't take me long to read at all, but it was one that really stuck with me for a long time after I read it. If you read my personal blog at all, you'll see that I wrote a book review on this, where I talk in depth a lot more about kind of its themes and what the book meant to me and kind of what I took away from it. Basically, on the surface, it's this really simple story about this guy who gets kidnapped and he wakes up in this underground bunker with no way out. And more people are kind of left down there with him, and they almost form their own mini society. There's 6 or 8 of them in the end, I think. And it's kind of, the story of what happens to them. When you start to think about it a little bit deeper, it's this really interesting commentary on the role of religion in society, how we function, as groups of people within society, and also this kind of imbalance of power between, the government and the people, and things like this. Moving on to non-fiction, there were so many good ones I read this year that I could pick. Some of the highlights were Skeleton Cupboard and Synaptic Self, but the one I really, really want to talk about, because I probably enjoyed it the most, I think, was How to Be a Heroine by Samantha Ellis. So it's kind of half literary criticism and half autobiography, but that makes it kind of really interesting to read and really easy to read, because it's kind of the best of both. It's not too self-indulgent, and it's not too kind of complex and, academic. It looks at reading about some of the greatest heroines in literature, or at least some of the most well-known, and just, female characters in general, and how she saw them when she was a girl, how she was when she was a child, a teenager, that sort of thing, and then her going back and rereading them now as an adult. And, it looks at everyone from sort of the female characters in fairy tales like The Little Mermaid and things like that, and also your kind of more well-known ones like Lizzie Bennet, Jane Eyre, Cathy Earnshaw, people like that, but also a few sort of lesser well-known ones as well, and ones that you wouldn't necessarily think of, the women from Valley of the Dolls and things like that. So it's really, really interesting. It's a great piece of writing from a feminist perspective, because it does what feminist writing should, and it's not preachy, and she's never playing the victim. It's just looking at women's roles, and it's very empowering, and I just really enjoyed it. It was a very, very good book to read. The last series I want to talk about that I read this year, I'm not sure if I'm talking about these because they're up in my favourites, but more because it's just quite an interesting one to talk about. But this year, for the first time, I read the Harry Potter books. I'm 23 and I'd never read Harry Potter before. Dan finally convinced me to do it because he loves the books, he loves the films. I love fantasy, I love magic, but Harry Potter just never appealed to me for some reason. I don't really know why. Really quick summary of all 7 books. The first one, it's clearly a children's book. I wasn't the right target audience. Same with the second one, really. But the first one was pretty terrible. The second one was kind of dull. The third one finally got some interesting characters, and I quite enjoyed that, actually. The fourth book was just unnecessarily long. I think, it started with 150 pages of nothing happening. Oh God, Harry is such an idiot. Can we just talk about that for a minute? Especially in that book, it really becomes clear he's not just this naive kid anymore. He's actually a bit of a lazy idiot. He has this amazing opportunity, and he just kind of keeps procrastinating. So, I guess he's relatable, but he's not necessarily the best role model, is he? Fifth book, I vaguely remember enjoying, but I don't actually remember anything that happens in it. So apparently the fifth book is the longest one, looking at the bookshelf, which is weird because what actually happens? The sixth book, I feel like it had a lot of potential, but then it was kind of disappointing. Also, Snape is a pig. Seventh book, kind of had a lot of potential, but it felt like the whole like Deathly Hallows thing came out of nowhere and was just kind of like thrown in. It would have been nice if maybe like there'd been a mention of the stories like earlier in the book, just kind of like in passing or something, to make it all kind of tie in. Again, it should probably have been like cut in half because it didn't need to be that long. There were like 250 pages of them sitting in tents like angsty teenagers complaining about each other and doing nothing. I didn't particularly like the ending. I didn't like Harry and Ginny together either, because like she came out of nowhere. She started off being a bit of a stalker and then suddenly he was interested in her like from nothing, and also she felt like a bit of a sort of like non-character without a personality, except, you know, clingy child, and I don't know, it was weird. Anyway, point is, I'm kind of complaining a lot, but they weren't as bad as I thought they were going to be. They're not my favourites. I probably wouldn't read them again, but they were okay. Anyway, that's my countdown of some of my favourite or most notable books that I've read in 2016. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what you've been reading, how many books you've read, what your favourites were. It would be really, really great to hear from you. If you do want to see me talk about books more, because they are something that I quite like, then like this video, because it would make me happy, and also I'll know that you liked it. Sorry, this has been a little bit of a long video, but thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon.